The seismograph went absolutely apeshit at 6:47 a.m. No, that's not the technical term, but after 15 years monitoring the San Andreas Fault for the USGS, sometimes you run out of proper vocabulary. The needles weren't just spiking. They were thrashing like they'd been possessed, drawing lines that looked like my son Miles's EKG that time he had pneumonia at 8. I'm rambling. I do that when I'm terrified, which I definitely was the second those readings showed a 7.9 magnitude centered exactly. And I mean exactly, beneath monitoring station Delta 7, which was where Miles was spending his spring break. My coffee mug, one of those insulated Contigo things that cost too much but keep stuff hot forever, hit the floor of my Pasadena office and I didn't even hear it. Just stared at the screen showing seismic wave propagation spreading across California like someone had dropped a stone in a pond. Except this stone weighed about 50 megatons and the pond was the entire goddamn fault system. Lucas, you seeing this? That was Marina Cole from the next cubicle over, her voice doing that thing where it goes up half an octave. She'd worked the Northridge quake back in '94, before I even finished my doctorate, and I'd never heard her sound scared before. My kid's at Delta 7, I said, already grabbing my keys. The Honda's transmission had been making that grinding noise for 3 months. Couldn't afford to fix it on a government salary, not with Miles's college fund bleeding me dry, but it was going to have to get me to the San Bernardino Mountains. Now, Lucas, wait. Marina was pulling up secondary data, her fingers flying across the keyboard with that nervous energy she got during major events. There's something wrong with the readings. Look at the temperature spike. I should have kept running for the parking lot. Should have ignored her. But I'm a scientist before I'm a father, which is probably one of those ugly truths my therapist would love to unpack if I could afford more than one session a month. The thermal overlay showed a massive heat signature radiating from the epicenter. Not the normal friction heat you'd expect from tectonic plates grinding together. This was different, concentrated, like something underground had cracked open and was venting. That's not geothermal, I said. My mind was already running through explanations, cataloging possibilities, because that's what I do when I'm panicking, I analyze. What the hell is that? The emergency alert screamed across our phones simultaneously. Emergency alert, California fault zones, biohazard breach. Biohazard, not geological, not seismic, biohazard. How is there a biohazard breach during an earthquake? Marina's question hung there like a wrong note. The USGS doesn't interface with CDC protocols. We monitor rock movement and magma chambers and crustal stress. We don't get alerts about biological containment failures unless someone built something they shouldn't have on top of an active fault line and never told us about it. My phone buzzed. Text from Miles, thank Christ. The reception was probably already getting spotty up there. AT&T coverage in the San Bernardinos was shit even on good days. But the message came through. Dad, WTF was that? Camp is freaking out. Dr. Rashid says stay inside. I typed back with shaking hands, on my way. Do not leave the main building. Love you. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, why is there smoke coming from the monitoring station? I was running before I'd consciously decided to move, Marina shouting something about evacuation protocols behind me. The parking garage elevator was out, probably safety override from the quake, so I took the stairs 3 at a time, my knee doing that clicking thing it's done since I tore my meniscus playing softball 2 years ago. The whole building was evacuating, people streaming toward exits with that particular shuffle run that happens when everyone's trying not to panic but definitely panicking. The 210 East was a parking lot. Of course it was. Earthquake plus morning commute equals every Angelino's nightmare. I cut onto surface streets, my phone's GPS rerouting every 30 seconds as traffic reports updated. The radio was a mess of contradictory information. Stay indoors, evacuate north, expect aftershocks, avoid all bridges and overpasses, but nothing about biohazards. Nothing about what was happening at Delta 7. I called Miles. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. Cell towers were probably overwhelmed or damaged or both. I left a message anyway. Miles, it's Dad. I'm coming. Stay with Dr. Rashid and the other students. Stay inside. I love you. I'm coming. The San Bernardino Mountains rose ahead of me like a wall. Highway 18, the rim of the world highway, which some genius had decided to name after the least reassuring concept possible, snaked up through scrub brush and Jeffrey pines. I'd driven it dozens of times to visit Miles at the youth seismology camp. Knew every hairpin turn and scenic overlook. Could usually make it to Delta 7 in 90 minutes. Today, the highway was cracking open. I hit the first fissure at mile marker 34, where the road curves around Crestline. Just a thin crack at first, maybe 6 inches wide, spiderwebbing across both lanes. I swerved around it, my heart hammering. Then another crack, and another. The asphalt was literally coming apart, chunks heaving up like the earth underneath was breathing. My phone rang. Marina. I put her on speaker. Lucas, don't go up there. Her voice was tight. The CDC just issued a level 4 containment advisory for the entire San Andreas corridor. They're saying, Jesus, Lucas, they're saying there's a subterranean research facility that's been compromised. What kind of facility? But I already knew. That temperature spike, the biohazard alert. Someone had built something secret underneath the monitoring stations, using the seismic research as cover. They're not saying, but the military's moving in. They're talking about containment explosives. Lucas, they might seal the whole area. My son is in there. The Honda's engine was screaming as I pushed it up the grade, weaving around stopped cars and terrified drivers. They can't just. They're evacuating civilian personnel. Miles will be fine, but you need to turn around. They're not letting anyone in. Through the windshield, I could see smoke rising from the peaks ahead. Not wildfire smoke, wrong color, wrong texture. This was thicker, darker, chemical. I can't. My voice cracked. Marina, I can't. He's 16. An aftershock hit, big enough that I felt it through the car's suspension. The Honda slewed sideways, tires screaming, and I fought to keep it on the road. A chunk of cliff face the size of a refrigerator crashed down 50 feet ahead, spraying rock fragments across both lanes. I stopped. Had to. The road ahead was blocked, but there was a fire access road to my right, barely visible through the manzanita. I'd used it once before during a research survey, back when Miles was 12, and insisted on coming along because he wanted to be a geologist like his dad. Before the divorce. Before he decided spending spring break at seismology camp was better than being home. The fire road was unpaved, rutted, and probably illegal to drive on, but the Honda's clearance was just barely enough. I turned onto it, branches scraping the paint job that was already held together with rust and prayer. Another text from Miles. Dad, they're trying to evacuate us, but Dr. Rashid collapsed. Something wrong with him. His veins look weird. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I typed, do not touch him. Keep away from anyone who looks sick. I'm almost there. The fire road switchbacked up through dense forest, climbing toward the ridge where Delta 7 sat. My phone kept buzzing with news alerts. Emergency alert. Expect controlled explosions along San Andreas. But I ignored them. Controlled explosions. They were going to seal the fault. Seal Miles inside with whatever had gotten loose. The trees opened up suddenly and I saw it. The monitoring station should have been just a cluster of prefab buildings and sensor equipment on a barren hilltop. But the earthquake had torn the ground open like a rotted seam, revealing something underneath that had no business being there. Concrete walls, 30 feet deep, glowing with that same thermal signature I'd seen on the seismographs. The glow was wrong, not fire, not lava. Fluorescent. Clinical. Like the lights in a hospital hallway, except hospitals don't get buried beneath earthquake monitoring stations. And people were coming out of the crack. Not coming out, crawling. Dr. Sarah Huang from UCLA, who'd given the keynote at last year's seismology conference. Marcus Webb, the station engineer I'd played poker with during equipment inspections. They were pulling themselves up through the fissure, their movements jerky and wrong, and even from 200 yards away, I could see what Miles meant about the veins. Dark lines spreading under their skin like tree roots, pulsing with that same fluorescent glow. I stopped the car. Couldn't make myself drive closer. Couldn't make myself turn around. The camp buildings were another 100 yards past the monitoring station, clustered on what had been stable bedrock. I could see figures moving inside, students, other researchers. Miles was in there. Had to be. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Dr. Trent? Male voice. Military precision. This is Colonel Graves, CDC Rapid Response. We have your son on our evacuation manifest. Do not attempt to reach the facility. Where are you taking him? I was already getting out of the car, checking my emergency kit in the back. Flashlight, the mag light that took D batteries, heavy as a weapon. First aid supplies, water bottles, protein bars that had probably expired. There's a helicopter en route to extract all personnel within the next 30 minutes. You need to clear the area. We're detonating shaped charges to seal the containment breach in 45 minutes. 45 minutes, half of which would be gone before that helicopter even arrived, assuming it could land in the aftershock chaos. I'm not leaving without my son. Dr. Trent. I hung up. Stupid? Probably. But Miles had watched me leave once already when his mother and I split up, had asked me why I had to work late so many nights, why my research was more important than being home. I wasn't leaving him again. The infected, I didn't have a better word for them, were spreading out from the fissure, stumbling through the rubble with that disturbing coordination. I counted 8, 9, a 10th emerging from the glowing crack, its face a mask of blistered tissue and glowing veins. I grabbed the mag light and started running toward the camp buildings, staying low, trying to remember my route. The infected didn't seem to notice me. They were focused on the camp, moving with terrible purpose. An aftershock hit, smaller this time, maybe 5.2, and I went down hard on the broken rock, scraping my palms raw. The ground rippled like water, and somewhere behind me I heard the Honda's frame creak and settle as the fire road beneath it gave way. No going back now. I could see Miles through the camp building's window, his face pressed against the glass. Alive, uninfected, scared out of his mind, but alive. And between us, the infected were closing in. The camp's main building was one of those modular things that gets trucked in on flatbeds, basically a double-wide trailer with extra insulation and government-issue furniture. Right now it looked like Fort Apache, with 16 terrified teenagers and 2 adult supervisors trying to hold off something they couldn't possibly understand. I reached the back door just as Dr. Rashid, who'd been leading this year's program, nice guy, always remembered Miles's peanut allergy, tried to open it from inside. His hands were shaking so badly he couldn't work the lock. "It's Lucas Trent," I shouted through the door. "Miles's father." The lock clicked. The door swung open maybe 6 inches before Rashid slammed it shut again. Through the gap, I'd seen his face, seen the veins. "Don't." Rashid's voice was wrong, strangled. "Don't let me out. I can feel it. In my blood. It's changing." Dr. Rashid collapsed like an hour ago, Miles said from somewhere inside. He sounded scared but coherent, using that clipped tone he got when he was trying to stay calm. Inherited it from me, probably, along with my tendency to analyze problems instead of feeling them. "He's been getting worse." We tried calling for help, but nobody answered. "There's a helicopter coming," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "Military evacuation. You need to hold on for..." I checked my watch, which had a crack across the face from my fall. 28 minutes. "Dad, there's no helicopter." That was Miles at the door now. I could see him through the reinforced window, and Christ, when had he gotten taller than me? Lanky kid with my nose and his mother's dark hair, wearing the Stanford sweatshirt I'd bought him, even though we both knew I couldn't afford Stanford's tuition. "We've been watching. There's nothing in the air except smoke." He was right. The sky above the mountains was choked with that chemical haze, thick enough that any helicopter pilot would have to be insane to fly through it. And the aftershocks kept coming. Another one hit even as I stood there, mild enough that I just had to brace against the building's frame. The infected were circling the main building now, 9 of them. Dr. Huang had collapsed mid-stride, her body seizing on the ground, moving with increasing coordination. They weren't attacking yet, just surrounding, like they were waiting for something. "Okay." I forced my voice steady, running calculations. "Okay. There's a canyon crossing about half a mile north of here. Old rope bridge that the Forestry Service uses. If we can reach it before they seal the fault." "Before they what?" Miles's voice shot up. "The military's detonating shaped charges to contain the breach." I kept my tone clinical, matter-of-fact, the way I'd explain tectonic subduction to undergrads. "Standard protocol for biohazard containment. They'll collapse the fissure and seal whatever got loose down there." "Dad, we're in the containment zone." "I know." Through the window, I watched the infected Sarah Huang finally stand back up. The veins in her face had spread, creating a web of fluorescent tracery from jaw to temple. Her eyes were still human. That was the worst part, seeing recognition there, but her body wasn't responding to her anymore. She walked toward the building with mechanical precision. "They knew," I said quietly, not really talking to Miles, just processing out loud, the way I do when I'm overwhelmed. "Someone at CDC or DARPA, or whoever the hell runs secret underground labs on active fault lines. They knew this was here. Probably been here for years, using the earthquake monitoring as cover. What is it? Miles asked. What got loose? I didn't have an answer. Some kind of seismic-triggered pathogen, obviously. Designed for what? Rapid infection? Behavioral modification? The infected were coordinating their movements, communicating somehow despite their obvious physical deterioration. My phone buzzed. Text from Marina. News saying they're evacuating San Bernardino. Saying there's a chemical leak. They're lying, aren't they? I typed back one-handed, yes. Listen, if I don't make it out, tell Miles's mother I tried. 3 dots. Then, you're getting out. Both of you. Another aftershock, bigger this time. Maybe 6.0. The building shuddered, and I heard glass breaking somewhere inside. The infected stumbled but stayed upright, their enhanced coordination adapting even as the ground tried to throw them down. We need to move now, I said, while they're disoriented. Is there a back exit? There's a window in the supply room, Miles said. But Dr. Rashid's infected. He can't come. Dad, we can't just leave him. Miles. I made him look at me through the window. Made him see what I'd already accepted. He's not going to make it. None of them are. The military's going to seal this entire area and probably firebomb it for good measure. Our only chance is to run. I watched him process that. Watched my 16-year-old son accept that we were abandoning people who needed help because the alternative was dying with them. Another thing he'd probably need therapy for, assuming we survived long enough for therapy to matter. Okay, he said finally. Okay, give us 2 minutes to get everyone to the supply room. I circled to the back of the building, keeping low, watching the infected. They were definitely coordinating now. 3 of them had moved to block the front entrance. 2 more were working on the door, not breaking it down, but working on it, their fingers picking at the lock mechanism with disturbing patience. The supply room window popped open. Miles's face appeared, then disappeared. A moment later, kids started climbing out. Teenagers in Stanford and Cal Poly hoodies, most of them crying, all of them trying not to scream. I counted them. 14, 15, 16. Miles came last, dropping to the ground next to me. Up close, I could see he'd been crying too, though he'd wiped his face. Trying to be brave. Trying to be like his father, who was terrified out of his mind but good at hiding it. Dr. Rashid? I asked. He told us to go. Miles's voice broke. He said he could hear them. The infected. In his head. Like a frequency he couldn't tune out. We started moving, staying low, herding the other students toward the tree line. Behind us, I heard the door to the main building finally give way. Heard the infected pour inside, their movements synchronized and horrible. The canyon crossing was uphill, which meant we were moving slowly. Too slowly. I could hear the infected behind us, crashing through the underbrush. They were hunting now. The rational, patient coordination had broken down into something more primal. Dad, Miles grabbed my arm. Dad, look. The canyon was in front of us, maybe 50 yards away. Beyond it, the highway where buses were supposed to evacuate civilians. Those buses had never shown up. Of course they hadn't. We'd been written off the moment the military decided to seal the breach. But between us and the canyon, the ground was cracking open. Not a full fissure like at the monitoring station, just stress fractures, spiderwebbing across the rock as tectonic pressure found new release points. And from those cracks, more of that fluorescent glow. There's more of them, Miles said. More labs, more facilities. Jesus Christ, Dad, how much did they build down there? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because he was right, this wasn't one isolated research station compromised by an earthquake. This was systemic. A whole network of facilities threaded through the San Andreas Fault like malignant roots. Another aftershock. Bigger. Maybe 6.5. Trees swayed, and I heard rock slides in the distance. The infected behind us went down, their coordination failing temporarily, and I saw our window. Run! We ran. All 16 kids plus me, sprinting for the canyon crossing. The rope bridge swayed ahead of us, ancient Forestry Service construction. Probably hadn't been inspected in years, but it was our only way across. The alternative was a 100-foot drop into a ravine filled with broken rock and Jeffrey pines. I reached the bridge first, testing the ropes. They held. Probably. Maybe. One at a time, I ordered. Move fast but don't run. If the bridge starts swaying too much. Dad. Miles was staring back the way we'd come. Dad, they're coming. The infected had recovered from the aftershock. They were close now. Close enough that I could see Dr. Huang's face, could recognize the woman who'd helped me revise my dissertation 7 years ago. She was still in there somewhere, I thought, trapped inside a body that wasn't hers anymore. Go! I shoved the first kid onto the bridge, then the second, third. They were moving too slowly, frozen by fear, and the infected were getting closer. Miles grabbed my arm. Dad, the timer. I checked my phone. 17 minutes until detonation. Not enough time to get everyone across one by one. Everyone on the bridge, I said. Now, all of you. It'll collapse. It's collapse or get infected. Move. They moved. 16 terrified teenagers crowding onto a rope bridge that was never designed for that kind of load. I felt the cables groan, heard the wooden planks creak. The whole structure swayed like a living thing, and I thought about tension calculations and weight distribution and load-bearing limits. Then I stopped thinking and started moving. The infected reached the bridge just as the last kid stepped onto it. I was bringing up the rear, walking backward, watching Sarah Huang's fluorescent eyes track me with terrible clarity. I'm sorry, I said. Don't know why. She probably couldn't understand anymore. An aftershock hit. Not huge, maybe 5.5, but enough. The bridge lurched sideways, cables screaming. One of the kids screamed too, and for a horrible moment I thought we were going over. But the bridge held. The infected tried to follow. Sarah Huang stepped onto the first plank, her weight making the whole structure shudder. Behind her, 3 more infected crowded forward. I pulled out my pocket knife. Not much of a weapon, Swiss Army thing I'd had since graduate school, but the blade was sharp enough. I started sawing at the support rope. Dad, what are you doing? Miles was halfway across, looking back, getting us some distance. The rope was thick, braided nylon designed for decades of weather and stress, but my knife was sharp and panic gave me strength. The first strands parted, then more. The bridge sagged. Sarah Huang lunged forward, her hands reaching for me. I jerked back, nearly losing my grip on the rope. Behind her, the other infected surged onto the bridge, and I felt the whole structure start to go. I cut the last strand. The bridge's near side collapsed with a sound like a gunshot. Sarah Huang went down into the canyon, still reaching. The other infected tumbled after her, their fluorescent veins tracing arcs through the air as they fell. I didn't watch them land. Dad! Miles was on solid ground on the far side, waving frantically. Dad, jump! The bridge was swinging now, a pendulum of rope and wood with me at the bottom end. I dropped the knife and grabbed the nearest cable, hauling myself hand over hand while the structure tried to shake me loose. An aftershock hit. The canyon walls shuddered and rock rained down around me. Something caught me across the shoulders, falling debris, probably a chunk of cliff face, and I almost let go. But Miles was screaming my name, and I was not going to fall while my son watched. I reached the far side. Hands grabbed me, Miles's hands, strong despite his teenage lankiness, and pulled me over the edge. We collapsed together on solid ground, both of us gasping, while the other kids stood in a shocked huddle around us. Behind us, what was left of the bridge dangled uselessly over the canyon. On the far side, more infected were emerging from the tree line, but they couldn't cross now. We'd bought ourselves distance. How long? Miles asked. I checked my phone. 8 minutes. We started moving again, this time toward the highway. The infected couldn't follow, but we were still in the blast radius. If we couldn't get far enough away when they detonated those shaped charges, the highway appeared through the trees. Empty. No evacuation buses. No military vehicles. Just abandoned civilian cars and the occasional overturned semi that had jackknifed during the quake. There. Miles pointed at a school bus, yellow and battered, sitting at an angle across both lanes. The kind that shuttles high school athletic teams. Think it runs? We ran to it. The door was open, keys still in the ignition. Some driver had abandoned it mid-evacuation. I climbed into the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine coughed. Died. Coughed again. Come on, I muttered. Come on, you piece of shit. The engine caught. Everyone in. I shouted. Miles, count heads. 16 plus you and me. Miles called back from halfway down the aisle. We got everyone. I threw the bus into drive and stomped the accelerator. The tires spun, caught, and we lurched forward down the highway. Behind us, I could hear explosions starting, small ones at first, just the shaped charges being positioned. How long? Miles asked again. Maybe 2 minutes. Maybe less. The highway wound down the mountain in a series of hairpin turns. Normally I'd take them at maybe 30 miles per hour, being cautious. Today I was doing 60, the bus's suspension screaming, kids in the back holding onto seats and each other. Another aftershock. The highway buckled underneath us, and for a horrible moment I thought we were going over the edge. But the bus held, tires screeching, and we kept moving. 1 minute, Miles said, watching my phone. I could see the valley below now. Could see San Bernardino in the distance, already shrouded in smoke and chaos. Could see. The detonation was beautiful in a terrible way. A series of coordinated explosions rippling along the fault line, perfectly timed to collapse the fissures inward. I watched in the rearview mirror as the mountain where we'd been standing simply folded in on itself, like a house of cards falling in slow motion. The shockwave hit us 30 seconds later. The bus lifted off the road, literally airborne for a moment, and came down hard on the shoulder. I fought the wheel, fighting to keep us from rolling, while kids screamed and Miles grabbed the dashboard. We slid, tires shrieking, metal scraping rock. The edge of the road was right there, a sheer drop into nothing, and I could see we were going over. Then we stopped. Just stopped. The bus's front wheels hanging over the edge, but the frame caught on a guardrail that was probably installed during the Nixon administration. We sat there, suspended, breathing. Everyone okay? I finally managed. Shakily, kids called out affirmatives. Someone was crying. Someone else was laughing hysterically. Miles just stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. We need to move, I said. Carefully. Everyone to the back of the bus. Slowly. We evacuated through the rear emergency exit, one person at a time, redistributing weight away from the front wheels. When Miles finally climbed out, last one, just like his father taught him, I grabbed him and held on. We made it, he said into my shoulder. Holy shit, Dad, we actually made it. I looked back up the mountain. Where Delta 7 had been, there was just a cloud of dust and smoke. The containment breach was sealed. The infected were buried. Dr. Rashid and Sarah Huang, and everyone else who hadn't made it out, they were gone. And somehow, impossibly, we were alive. The field hospital in San Bernardino was overwhelmed. Hundreds of quake injuries, dozens of suspected exposures to whatever had gotten loose from the CDC facility. Miles and I spent 6 hours in a quarantine tent while technicians in hazmat suits took blood samples and asked questions we couldn't answer. What did you see? The technician asked me. Young kid, maybe late 20s, with a CDC badge that looked too new to be real. Describe the infected individuals. They moved wrong, I said. Coordinated, like they were receiving instructions. What kind of instructions? How the hell should I know? I'm a geologist, not a... I caught myself. Took a breath. They had fluorescent markers in their circulatory systems. Bioluminescent tracers, maybe? And they displayed behavioral synchronization despite obvious physical deterioration. The technician made notes. Did any of them speak? Dr. Rashid did. Before he fully turned. He said he could hear them. Like a frequency. More notes. Then, Dr. Trent, were you aware of any CDC research facilities in the monitoring station area prior to the earthquake? No. Did you observe any CDC personnel or equipment during your... I observed a secret facility that shouldn't exist being ripped open by an earthquake on a fault line that your organization has been studying for decades. I kept my voice level clinical. I observed people I knew being infected with something that was probably designed in that facility. And I observed the military burying all the evidence under about 10 million tons of rock. The technician closed his notebook. Your quarantine period is complete. You're free to go. Just like that. 6 hours of questions and blood draws, and we were free to go. Because they'd found what they needed to find. We weren't infected, weren't carrying whatever Sarah Huang and Dr. Rashid had caught, and now we were inconvenient witnesses to something that officially never happened. Miles was waiting outside the tent, looking exhausted. The other kids had already been picked up by frantic parents. We were the last ones. Mom's in Sacramento, Miles said. Can't get down here because of the freeway closures. She's losing her mind. I pulled out my phone, which had maybe 5% battery left. Called my ex-wife. Lucas? Jennifer's voice was ragged. Is he okay? Is Miles? We're fine. We're both fine. I heard her sob, then collect herself. What happened up there? The news is saying it was a gas leak. That can't be right. It wasn't a gas leak. I watched the CDC technician walk away toward a cluster of military vehicles. Jenny, I need you to listen. Don't let Miles talk to reporters. Don't let him post anything on social media. Don't let him talk to anyone official looking who asks questions. Lucas, you're scaring me. Good. Be scared. Be careful. And trust me, whatever they're saying on the news is a lie. I hung up before she could ask more questions. Turned to find Miles staring at me. What now? He asked. Now we figure out what to do with what we know. We got a ride to Pasadena from a National Guard convoy that was evacuating civilians from the quarantine zone. The city was a mess, broken windows, collapsed buildings, fires burning in a dozen different neighborhoods. The death toll was in the hundreds already and climbing. And nobody was talking about the CDC facility. Nobody was asking why there was a biohazard breach during a seismic event. It was all just earthquake damage and tragic loss of life and rebuild stronger messaging. Marina met us at my apartment. She'd been camping out there since the evacuation, using my coffee maker and apparently stress-eating my entire stockpile of protein bars. Jesus, Lucas. She hugged me hard enough that my ribs creaked. I thought you were dead. Almost was. Multiple times. I looked at Miles, who'd collapsed on my couch with the boneless exhaustion of teenagehood. We need to talk about what we saw up there. Marina pulled out her laptop. I've been monitoring the official reports. They're calling it an industrial accident at a natural gas pumping station, saying the earthquake ruptured underground storage tanks. There was no gas pumping station, I said. I know. She pulled up a satellite image, pre-earthquake, dated 3 months ago. The monitoring station was clearly visible. But there was something else, too. Geometric patterns in the rock that I'd never noticed before. Regular, artificial. Someone built something under there, Marina said. Something big. And they built it deliberately on an active fault segment. Why? Miles asked. Why would you put a research facility on an earthquake fault? Because they wanted to study something that responded to seismic stress, I said slowly. The pieces were clicking together. A pathogen that activates under tectonic pressure, gets released during earthquakes, spreads through the population while everyone's distracted by disaster relief. That's insane, Marina said. That's military research. I sat down, suddenly exhausted. Develop a weapon that triggers during natural disasters. Deploy it in earthquake zones. Blame the casualties on the disaster itself. Dad. Miles's voice was small. They're going to cover this up, aren't they? I didn't answer right away. Couldn't. Because the truth was worse than a simple cover-up. The truth was that somewhere in a CDC office or Pentagon briefing room, people who'd never seen Sarah Huang's fluorescent veins or heard Dr. Rashid's desperate warning were already spinning the narrative. Earthquake damage. Tragic but natural. Nothing to see here. Yeah, I said finally. They're going to cover it up. Marina was still scrolling through satellite images, her face illuminated by the laptop screen. There's something else. I've been mapping the aftershock sequence. The epicenters are following the fault line, but they're also clustering around specific coordinates. Here, and here, and here. She showed me the map. I counted 8 distinct clusters along a 100-mile stretch of the San Andreas. More facilities, Miles said. Maybe. Or maybe the pathogen is spreading through the fault system itself. Marina pulled up thermal imaging. The temperature anomalies are migrating, moving with the seismic waves. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer, but something made me hit accept. Dr. Trent. It was Colonel Graves, the CDC officer from before. I need you to come to a briefing tomorrow at 0800. Location will be texted to you. I'm not interested in. Dr. Rashid is alive. I froze. What? He was extracted during the containment operation. He's in isolation at a secure facility. He's asking for you. That's impossible. He was infected. We left him. Dr. Trent. Graves' voice was careful now. What you saw during the initial outbreak was only the first stage. The pathogen doesn't kill. It transforms. And in some cases, the transformation can be managed. I looked at Miles, who was watching me with wide eyes. Looked at Marina, whose fingers had stopped moving on the keyboard. I'll be there, I said. Graves gave me an address in Riverside, probably another facility I'd never heard of, and hung up. Dad. Miles's voice was uncertain. What did he say? Dr. Rashid's alive. I was still processing it, still trying to reconcile what I'd seen. The man collapsing, the veins spreading, with the idea that he could have survived. They extracted him. He's in some kind of isolation facility. You're not actually going, Marina said. Lucas, this is obviously a trap. They want to debrief you, find out what you know, maybe make sure you don't talk. Or they want help. I stood up, started pacing. Can't help it when I'm thinking through a problem. Rashid's a virologist. Spent 10 years at USAMRIAD before he went into education. If anyone could understand what that pathogen is doing, it's him. And they need you because I saw it happen. Saw the initial infection sequence. Observed the behavioral changes in real time. I was thinking like a scientist again, cataloging evidence. From their perspective, I'm a first-hand witness to stage 1 progression. From my perspective, Miles said quietly, you're my dad and I don't want you going anywhere near those people. That stopped me, made me look at him, really look at him, and see a kid who'd almost lost his father today, who'd watched people he knew turn into something monstrous, who'd been abandoned by the institutions that were supposed to protect him. I have to go, I said. Miles, I know. He looked away. You have to. It's your job. It's always your job. The words hit harder than any aftershock. Because he was right. Even now, even after everything, I was choosing the work over being present. Choosing to chase answers instead of just being here with my son. Then I'm coming with you, Miles said. Absolutely not. Dad, I was there. I saw what you saw. I'm a witness too. You're 16. And I watched Dr. Rashid collapse. Watched those people come out of the ground. Watched you cut that bridge. His voice was shaking but determined. You don't get to protect me from this. I'm already in it. Marina cleared her throat. For what it's worth, Lucas? He's right. They're not going to let this go. You're both witnesses. Better to face it together than have them pick you off separately. I wanted to argue. Wanted to play the protective father card. Send Miles to his mother's place in Sacramento, where he'd be safe from CDC interrogations and military debriefings. But Sacramento wasn't safe. Nowhere was safe, not really. Because if Marina was right about those thermal signatures migrating along the fault line, this wasn't over. The earthquake had opened one facility, but there were others, waiting. And the next big quake, and there would be a next big quake, because this was California, and the fault was still loaded with tectonic stress, would crack them open too. Okay, I said. We go together. But Marina, I'm coming too. She shut her laptop with finality. Someone needs to document this. Someone needs to be the backup plan if you two don't come back. Jesus. I rubbed my face, feeling every one of my 43 years. This is insane. We should be calling reporters, going public. With what evidence? Marina asked. Satellite photos that could show anything? Your eyewitness testimony that can be dismissed as shock and trauma? They've already buried the physical evidence under a mountain. Without proof, we're just conspiracy theorists. She was right. Of course she was right. But that didn't make it easier to accept. We spent the night at my apartment, none of us really sleeping. Miles crashed on the couch, his phone clutched in one hand, probably texting with other survivors. Marina took the chair, her laptop open to seismic monitoring software that she'd somehow convinced to keep running despite the network chaos. I stood at the window watching the city. Fires still burning in the distance. Helicopters sweeping searchlights across damaged neighborhoods. And underneath it all, the fault line. Sleeping. Waiting. My phone buzzed with the location for tomorrow's briefing. Riverside Medical Center, Building C, Sublevel 3. The kind of address that didn't appear on Google Maps. Another text, this one from Jennifer. Miles says you're going to some government briefing tomorrow. Lucas, what the hell is going on? I typed, I don't know yet, but I'll keep him safe. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then you better. At dawn, we loaded into Marina's Subaru. The Honda was presumably still sitting on that fire road, if it hadn't been buried in the controlled collapse. The drive to Riverside took an hour through checkpoints and detour routes. National Guard was everywhere, and twice we got stopped by military police who checked our IDs against some kind of list. They're tracking us, Miles muttered from the back seat. They know exactly where we are. Of course they do, Marina said. Question is, are they protecting us or containing us? The Riverside Medical Center looked like any other hospital from the outside. Bland architecture, parking structure, emergency vehicles. But Building C was set back from the main complex, surrounded by higher fences and security cameras. Colonel Graves met us at the entrance. In person, he looked younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of rigid posture that came from too many years in uniform. Dr. Trent. Mr. Trent. He nodded at Miles. And you are? Dr. Marina Cole, USGS. She didn't offer her hand. I'm here as Dr. Trent's colleague and legal witness. Something flickered across Graves' face, surprise maybe, or calculation, but he just nodded. This way. Sublevel 3 was accessed through an elevator that required 3 separate key cards. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked more like a starship than a hospital. White walls, LED lighting, the faint hum of ventilation systems working overtime. Before we proceed, Graves said, I need to establish some ground rules. What you're about to see is classified at the highest levels. Disclosure carries federal penalties, including imprisonment. Can't disclose what we've already disclosed, I said. We've told our families. We've documented what we saw. We're aware. Graves' tone was neutral, which is why we're bringing you into the fold rather than attempting containment through other means. Dr. Trent, your seismic expertise is valuable. And Mr. Trent's observations during the initial outbreak provide data we don't have from other witnesses. Other witnesses? Miles asked. How many people saw this? 47 individuals were evacuated from the fault zone. 31 have been interviewed. You're among the last. 47. Out of how many? I thought about the kids at the camp, the researchers at Delta 7, the response teams who must have gone in before they sealed everything. How many didn't make it out? I asked. Graves didn't answer, just kept walking. The corridor ended at an observation window, the kind with one-way glass that you see in police procedurals. Beyond it was an isolation chamber, and in that chamber, sitting at a metal table with restraints on his wrists, was Dr. Rashid. He looked almost normal. Almost. But the veins were still there, faint fluorescent tracery under his skin. And his eyes, when he looked up at the window, directly at where we stood, his eyes had that same terrible clarity I'd seen in Sarah Huang. He can't see you, Graves said. The glass is opaque from his side. What's his status? I made myself use clinical language, detached from the fact that this was a man I'd known. A man who'd remembered Miles's peanut allergy. Stage 2 infection stable. Graves pulled up a tablet, showed us readouts that meant nothing to me. The pathogen has integrated with his neural tissue, but hasn't progressed to full behavioral modification. He maintains cognitive function and personality. He's unique. Most stage 2 subjects lose coherence within 48 hours. How long has he been like this? Marina asked. 63 hours. I did the math. That was at least 12 hours past when he should have degraded. Maybe more. He wants to talk to you, Graves said. Says he has information that you'll understand. Given your shared experience at the outbreak site. What kind of information? He won't say. Won't communicate with anyone but you. Graves gestured toward a door I hadn't noticed. There's an intercom system. You can speak with him from the adjacent room. We'll monitor, of course. Of course. I looked at Miles. You should wait. I'm coming with you. Graves started to object, but I cut him off. He stays with me. Non negociable. The adjacent room was small, barely bigger than a closet, with an intercom panel and another window, this one facing directly into Rashid's cell. I pressed the talk button. Dr. Rashid? It's Lucas Trent. His head snapped up. For a moment, I saw recognition flicker across his face. Then something else, relief? Fear? Lucas. His voice came through tinny and distorted. Thank God. Is Miles? I'm here too, Dr. Rashid. Miles leaned toward the microphone. We made it out. All of us. Rashid's shoulders sagged. Good. That's good. He looked up at the window again, and I realized he knew we were there despite Graves' assurance. Could probably sense us through whatever the pathogen had done to his perception. Lucas, they're not telling you the truth. About what? About what this is. What they built down there. He leaned forward, restraints clinking. It's not a weapon. It's a diagnostic tool. I glanced at Marina, who looked as confused as I felt. What do you mean? The pathogen responds to tectonic stress. Activates during seismic events. But it's not designed to spread or kill. Rashid's words were coming faster now, urgent. It's designed to detect. To find people with specific neural architectures. People whose brains process seismic information differently. That doesn't make any sense, Marina said. It does if you're trying to find natural earthquake predictors. Rashid looked directly at the window, directly at us. Some people can sense earthquakes before they happen. Not consciously, it's a physiological response. Changes in electromagnetic fields, subsonic vibrations. Their nervous systems pick up signals the rest of us miss. And this pathogen finds those people. I said slowly. It integrates with their neural tissue, amplifies the sensitivity, creates a network of living earthquake detectors. Rashid's fluorescent veins pulsed. Lucas, I can feel it now. The fault line. I can feel every stress point, every place where the rock is loading. It's like I'm part of the earth itself. Miles grabbed my arm. Dad, he's saying. I know what he's saying. I was already running calculations, thinking through implications. They were building a human early warning system, using infected individuals as sensors. But it went wrong, Rashid said. The pathogen was supposed to stay dormant until triggered by controlled exposure. But the earthquake cracked the containment, released it into the environment, and now it's spreading through the fault zone, infecting anyone with the right neural profile. Graves' voice came through a speaker I hadn't noticed. Dr. Rashid, that's enough. No. Rashid stood up, restraints pulling tight. Lucas, you need to understand. They're going to use this. They're going to deliberately infect people, create a prediction network. And they don't care about the cost. The cost? I asked. Stage 3. Rashid's voice dropped. After 72 hours, the integration becomes irreversible. You're not human anymore. Not really. You're just a node in the network. An antenna for tectonic signals. The intercom cut off. Through the window, I saw Graves enter Rashid's cell with 2 guards. Rashid was shouting something, but I couldn't hear him anymore. We need to go, Marina said. Now. Agreed. I grabbed Miles's arm, pulled him toward the door. But Graves was faster. The door locked with an electronic click. I'm sorry, Dr. Trent. Graves' voice came through the speaker again. But you've been exposed. All 3 of you. And we need to determine if you're compatible. Compatible? Marina was already pulling out her phone. No signal. Of course there was no signal. We were in a shielded underground facility. Some people carry the neural markers the pathogen seeks. You were all in close proximity to stage 1 subjects. If you're carriers, we need to know. And if we are? I demanded. Then you join the network, voluntarily or otherwise. Through the window, I could see Rashid fighting the guards. Could see his fluorescent veins blazing brighter. And I realized he'd wanted to warn us. That's why he'd asked for me specifically. He'd known what they were planning. Dad. Miles's voice was steady despite his fear. What do we do? I looked at the locked door, at the cameras in the corners, at Marina already examining the intercom panel with the engineer's eye. We figure out how they're wrong about the locks, I said, because I'm not letting them turn my son into a science experiment. Marina pulled a multi-tool from her bag, leave it to a field geologist to carry tools everywhere, and started unscrewing the intercom panel. Air circulation, she muttered. These rooms need ventilation. Follow the ducts. Behind us, alarms started blaring. We had maybe 2 minutes before security arrived, and 3 days before we'd know if we were infected.